Welcome to Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show with Lisa and Nancy, publishers of Big Blend magazines, and nature photographer Margot Carrera. Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us here on our four-part series of Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show, focusing on nature destinations across the country and around the world. This is our fourth and final episode in this specific and special series. It's the fourth and final, but last but not least at all, we are going to Southeast USA. We're going to coastal Mississippi on this episode with Lisa Evans, who's a travel writer and author of the book 100 Things to Do Before You Die in Coastal Mississippi. It's a wonderful book, and she's a wonderful writer, and she loves nature, and she takes us all through the area and also talks about climate change and the issues that face her region. We also go to Florida, fabulous Florida, with Kathleen Walls. She's a travel writer and author of multiple books, and she talks about Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge and other regions. And we have Dr. Diane Dobry on as well, who's a travel writer and memoirist, and also the author of DiscoveryDays.com, which is a wonderful blog to follow for travel inspiration. Both Kathleen and Diane live and travel throughout Florida. So it's going to be a great podcast. So stay tuned. Enjoy both episodes within one episode, right? But here's the most important thing. Let's get out in nature and honor the beauty of Mother Earth. So take care. Enjoy. Thank you. Hey, everybody, we're continuing on with our segments or our episodes on here on Big Blend Radio with our Nature Connection show, focusing on nature destinations, experiences you can have to go out in nature, to connect with nature, and then hopefully from there save nature. And Lisa Evans is back on the show. She's on Big Blend Radio frequently. She is a travel writer and author of 100 Things to Do in Coastal Mississippi Before You Die. So you know what she's going to talk about today, right? A little bit of coastal Mississippi. You can follow her on her website, writerlisa.com, and that's in the show notes. So welcome back, Lisa. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Always happy when there's another Lisa and it's you on the other end of this conversation. This is cool. Coastal Mississippi, this is exciting to talk about because the nature to me, Mississippi as a state has different topographies, right? No, not huge mountains, but it does get cold. I have driven through the cold through the entire state.
Yeah, the north, I'm on the coast, so it doesn't get as cold. Although I will say this past winter we've had a bit of a cold stretch, for 3-4 days, and that's about all I want anymore. But yeah, it does get cool. Like even tonight it's kind of dreary, it's rainy. It's gonna be in the probably mid to high 30s. So it does get cold. It doesn't get, like Northeast or that kind of thing cold, but for the most part, we're pretty temperate.
Yeah, and everyone listen to Lisa's accent. She's not from Mississippi.
No,
And
I'm
so
not.
she knows real snow stuff, right?
Oh, yes. Snow
You
and cold.
do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And this is, as much as I complain, because I have acclimated to the weather, I will say. So my blood has thinned and I do, whine a little bit when it gets below 50, but then I have to, pinch myself and remember what it used to be. So,
Well,
I mean,
yeah, but yeah. But if you think about the entire state, I know you represent coastal Mississippi. She's adamant
mhm,
on this, but the whole state of Mississippi, it does change up. Like if you do the Natchez
absolutely.
Trace Parkway, which we've done parts of it, but I want to do the whole route in one thing, you're going to go through, there's like prairies and lagoons and swampy areas, and then you get out to the coast, and your area is so interesting because you've got like lagoons and wetlands and the ocean. And I think that's what makes it just this extra magical paradise. And at the same time, you still have forest. And that's what I wanted to say about like these. You don't necessarily have mountains, but you can get cold and you do have forests and you do have these different topographies, even on the coast, right?
We do. Most of the things that we have on the coast are obviously water related between the bayous and the Mississippi Sound, which is actually an estuary, and then 12 miles out is technically the Gulf of Mexico. So we that's kind of all water related. We have bayous and marshes and rivers and all kinds of fun things. So we have both saltwater and freshwater. So that's kind of interesting as well. As you go into North Mississippi, yeah, you're going to get the snow I mean, there actually is snow in Mississippi. It's like from, I would say, I think Hattiesburg north, mostly,
Hmm.
Jackson and then North Mississippi. And the different thing about that is, they don't know what to do with it. I mean, we're not prepped for big snow. So, I mean, it's not like we have snowplows and sanders and all of that stuff. So, I mean, 1 inch of snow pretty much shuts a good portion of the
Everybody
state
looks
down.
outside and goes, "Hell no, we're not
That
going out."
and
Yeah,
I mean, literally everything shuts down. And here I am from the Northeast going, what's wrong with you people?
you
But
just put on a sweater. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, but realistically, especially here on the coast, because it does get cold, we have a lot of water, we have a lot of bridges. So as everybody knows, bridges freeze
Yep.
quickly. And
Yep.
if you are not accustomed to, I mean, nobody's prepared for ice. Ice is, one of those things that, is deadly. So if you are not prepared and you don't have the equipment to countermand the ice, it actually is better that everybody stays home. So
Yeah, I mean, Nancy and I did a lot of that in Oregon in places that Oregon was not used to either. So it's kind of, cool that we're talking about climate because climate change is
ugh.
kind of real, wouldn't you think?
Oh
And
my,
so it's,
yeah. There's not a doubt in my mind that
yeah,
climate change it's a huge, huge factor, and you can see it. I mean, I can definitely see it just from north to south, but even here in the south, even like our last summer or this past summer 2023 was just one of the hottest. It was. I mean, I have gotten used to the hot weather here. Last summer, I will say stretched it, so you can tell even here it's hot. It's
you're
getting
swinging.
hotter. It
Yeah.
is.
So
It
it's like
is.
the midlife thing where, we're getting hot flashes and then all of a sudden we're freezing,
Yeah.
as
It's
women. It's
20
kind of,
2023 and early 24 has just been a very strange weather. And even, as much as I'm not a fan of hurricanes, believe me, but if you just in the time that I have been here on the coast, which is just about 11 years, you can see the difference. There are more hurricanes that go up the East Coast, that they still come in the Gulf. Don't get me wrong. I mean, Florida can tell you, we can tell you, Texas can tell you, but there's a lot that go up the East Coast now. I mean, if
yeah.
you watch
Remember
during
that
hurricane
one with,
season,
you remember New Jersey and New York getting nailed that one year,
that was
which
the year
was,
I moved. That was the year
oh,
I
oh,
moved
there you
south.
go. See, and that was kind of like, hello, this stuff is real. So,
Hmm.
I know we're talking about nature, but nature is reclaiming things and doing things. And I can tell you from driving the country, and Nancy and I have been through so many different weather systems, and everyone goes, well, it wasn't like this last year, and it hasn't been like this for the
Correct.
last 10 years.
Well,
So it's
yeah.
it's kind of real, and we can all argue about stuff, but there's no point in it, honestly,
But
when
you
you
know what?
actually are dealing with.
Mother Nature is going to win. You're never going to beat Mother Nature.
Well,
You
that's the
have to,
beauty.
yeah.
Yeah, that's the
Mother
beauty
Nature
about getting
is the
out.
win.
Yeah, she's gonna win, and the reality is you're
Exactly.
not gonna understand until you get out in her, like in her territory, which is our territory, and
Hmm.
coexist. Then you start to understand more. There's so many little intricate things that Mother Nature shares and teaches us. You know, um,
Absolutely.
I mean, some of us look to Mother Nature as God, and other goes like, "Hey, no, God made Mother Nature." So I'm not getting into that war either.
Correct.
But the reality is, hey, this is all connected to us human beings, and the more we get out, the more we understand, and the better we can coexist and understand and handle things as things get a
Hmm.
little wonky. Being in Mississippi too, with hurricanes and things like that, are you feeling like Wow, this whole conversation went off on a different tangent, didn't it? It's all good. This is the nature connection, right? We can do what we want. But being in a zone where the temperatures are fluctuating so much now and hurricanes and we've been through tornado areas also in Mississippi
Hmm.
actually.
Oh, yes.
A few
Tornado
years
Alley.
about 4 years ago we drove through that as it was going on and ended up in coastal Mississippi actually at the beginning of a hurricane, and we were in
Hmm.
Gulfport at the beach going, we're eating a sandwich going, this isn't feeling normal. And then we found out it wasn't normal and we just beat a hurricane like as we left it happen, right?
Hmm.
Um, and it was a crazy kind of thing. And we've managed to, thank goodness, thank God, thank, the powers that be, the angels on our shoulders, managed to somehow be okay, and beat storms and run them and go through hell to do it. But being in those areas, and Nancy and I used to live in Florida and have been through actual hurricanes a few times, and even in our pet sitting experience on the tour, gone through some, but not bad.
Hmm.
We were lucky where we were. Scary, electricity out, all of that kind of stuff. It's the actual aftermath that is worse, depending. But are you feeling like your cities and communities are looking at climate change to be real? That's what I wanted to ask about this as these
Um,
things are happening, or is it this still conversation that needs to get a bit louder maybe or a bit more real?
I guess I'm kind of 50-50 on that.
Mm,
I see that there's a portion that is going, hey guys, this stuff it happens for a reason, and we need to do this, this, and this. But then you've got the what I'll call old school people that are like, oh no, climate change isn't real. It's, all this, that, and the other thing. All you have to do is watch your weather from year to year, and you can tell how real it is.
yeah.
But I would say that people down here, I most of us have learned that, during the summertime, especially during hurricane season, you watch the weather very closely and you listen. I mean,
Mm,
it's not always 100% accurate, but
no.
better to be over prepared than under, I guess.
Yeah. I mean, we were in Arkansas last year in the summer and went through a string of storms. I don't know if you were coming on a show during one. And I mean, we were like, sorry, we're out, we're out, we're
Yeah.
out. The electricity of the lightning, there was this like ribbon lightning or something, like it was just like it was
Hmm.
like a blanket of lightning hitting us where we were, and you could feel it hit the ground.
Well,
And it was
yeah,
traumatic. And we had three tornadoes in one night, you
yeah.
know, and
Spring,
stuff like
spring, I will say spring storms in the South are very, I mean, if you're one of those people that enjoy watching,
I
the
do,
storms and the
I
storms
do.
roll in from the water, we get some pretty wild storms in the spring, I will say. And,
They're
if
cool.
especially if they're out over the water and you're just sitting there and you're watching the lightning, and exactly what you're describing, I mean, it's real. Those lightning bolts are like, it's like cartoon characters. It's like so,
But it
it's
but it's
precise.
real. Okay, so this
Oh,
is a whole other
absolutely.
nature connection. Honestly,
Exactly.
I think I like that we're talking about this is completely different because the weather is the most humbling thing. You
Uh-huh.
are you are you are putty in the hands of nature and the weather, right? And to me, like we just I can't even tell you how many snowstorms I just drove through, and I don't even want to think about it again. And it wasn't necessarily Mother Nature freaking me out, it was about other people being on the road.
Yeah.
I drove it at night on mountain passes with trucks on
Oh,
a
oh
two-lane
goodness.
highway. Yeah, yeah, but we did it. We did it, and I think I'm still going through a little bit of PTSD on it. Like, no kidding, no kidding. These guys are trained. I'm not, and um, but it is about being 100% aware. But like at the same time, I'm like, holy crap, this is so cool. Look what
Yeah.
nature's doing. And then all of a sudden you get out of it, and the next morning you're seeing little western towns all snowed in that haven't seen snow for like 2 decades. And it's like, wow, this is so cool. And then next thing you know, you can't get to where you are, and you're detoured all the way from Kingman, Arizona to Tucson to get to Lubbock. You went down to go up because everything is, and then we went through rainstorms. But I am one of those people, and I think a lot of us are, where you get sucked into nature and the weather stations, right?
Hmm.
And when we were in Arkansas, the lady we were pet sitting for said, "You've got to watch the NASA." And she says, "If you don't do that, you're screwed. It's not right. They are the most accurate person at, like, or entity, right? It's not a
Hmm.
person, but
Well, yeah,
that's the
considering they
satellite.
are
And then
NASA, you would hope so.
yeah, and then everything goes from them to the other places, so there's a delay. This is the correct one. And I have to say, she's really right. There is a 2 hour delay from what I've learned, a 1 to 2 hour delay almost in going from the NASA thing to the actual, or the weather thing. Maybe it's NASA weather, whatever. The real science people doing
Yep,
it
yep.
versus
And
going to the website,
or
the
is it
other websites.
NOAD or
I'm
something?
no, yeah, yeah. You go to the real ones, right? The
Yes.
people that are doing it, and you're going to get it a little quicker, and you have to learn how to watch the radar, but that's so cool.
Uh-huh.
Versus, and so that's part of it. And being in these storms, like, we're going to Tucson in July, and we used to live in Tucson, and people are like, "Oh, that's a really funny time to go." But, that's monsoon season. And if you're
Mhm.
lucky, you get to see the monsoon storms, which are epic. And it's kind of like being on the beach when you have really big waves that can take you down, and
Oh yeah.
you can't, what I mean? So it's that humility, that humbling thing,
Hmm.
that I would say that nature puts you in your place as a
It,
human and an
it
animal.
it absolutely does. But then on the same token, if you're nice and you take care of it, it's just an endless source of beauty. So.
Okay, so now going to that. So I know they've been working on this project. I think we covered this 10 years ago on the show, even before the tour, going from New Orleans all the way across, I think all the way to Houston area, maybe, like on and off, right? Where
Mhm.
you leave the wetlands and let the and repropagate the wetlands basically as a buffer. Especially, you remember Houston had that hurricane and all the flooding happened and
Yep,
everything.
yep, yep.
That was part of it. So mostly the Houston area and that region. So the reality is, oh, let's have our seaside house. We all want that. We want the Airbnb there. We want all of that, right? We do. I do. I mean, come
Uh-huh.
on. I want the beach cottage. I don't care what beach it is. I don't want the people beaches. I want the nature beach, right? I don't care if it's in Oregon on the coast, with the ruggedness. Well, if it's cold, I don't know. Now I have to change my mind on that. But the reality is, this buffer that we're not letting happen, which is nature's buffer, is what's hurting our homes on the inland. And so there was this project of creating this buffer system, basically on the Gulf. Let's just say the Gulf, right? That's what it
Hmm.
is. And making it more of a recreation area. So people, like, it's protected for nature, but you can have recreation, which is
Yep.
always this two-sided thing. Let's have recreation, let's have nature, but we have to balance it out and be kind and be nice as humans. But if we let nature have habitat, then we're safe on the other side. Now, is that something on your side that you're seeing? Do you have places like that that buffer and help buffer the homes through nature?
Um, I don't know. I don't know about homes. I mean, there's a lot of urban down here on the coast, but you can go 10 minutes up the area and you can be in quote unquote the country. I think a lot of the things we are trying to keep our beach destination, but they are doing little things. Like one of the things that pops into mind, and it's not necessarily home for humans, but it's basically we have a big tern population, the birds.
Mm,
And our beaches, basically, what they started to do, because of course you got erosion and you got the storms and whatever. And of course, we have a lot of people because it is a tourist destination. But they've been growing along our man-made beaches, the seagrass, and they're breeding grounds for terns. And then they block them off. And believe it or not, people are very respectful when the terns are breeding. So they're trying to bring the seagrass back on the beach and in these protected areas for the terns. So the terns will nest and breed and all of that. And that actually works pretty good. We have a lot of places here, and we call them attractions for the tourists, but realistically, they do great conservation. They're great teachers for, adults and kids alike about how to respect nature and what to do, and how to, as you say, be good humans.
Mm.
So, they put them off as attractions, so we can, but they also have a very high learning conservation. This is what we should do. This is what we have to do to keep this species or whatever. So I will say there is I think even with all of our casinos and hotels and whatever, there's a nice balance of those out there that are trying to keep the seafood population and the terns and the sandhill cranes and all the other birds. I mean, there are really nice places here that you can go and explore and learn and respect nature as you should.
I love that. I love that. And I think it has to have that balance of people being part of the nature. And
Mm-hmm.
it's part of why we have the Wilderness Act, right? That came out over 50 years ago. I think last year was 50 years or 51 years, where here's your national park, but this area is wilderness area, and to go in it, you have to have a permit, and you're on
Mm-hmm.
foot. You're backpacking. You're not taking your car. You're not doing any of that stuff. You are one with the wilderness, and whatever happens out there stays out there,
Right, exactly.
literally, right? But they really limit it. People on Pacific Crest Trail and even the Appalachian Trail understand all of that, and at the same time we want to have people in it so they understand. And if I just do believe if we don't connect, it's really hard. I think we can't go everywhere. We just recently did a show on whales for World Whale Day, and we were talking about the fact that the humpback whales were saved by people around the world and across the country, even if
Mm-hmm.
they didn't uh, go to the ocean and
Right.
see a humpback whale. They saved them. But so we can save species, we can do things, but still, if you don't have those steps and those moments in nature, you don't quite understand. It is part of who we are, I believe. Do you
Mm-hmm.
feel that? Like when you
Yeah.
go out and
Yes, and like I said, I mean, I've always enjoyed nature. I mean, I'm not going to say I'm a rock climber or an adventure hiker, but I'm good with, I like going through hikes. And one thing, my kids are all grown adults with their own kids now, but one thing, when we used to do a lot of camping, and when the kids were younger and whatever, and one of the things that was instilled in them at a very, very young age, if you go on a hike, whatever you take in, you bring out, and you bring out more, because there's people that have gone before you that are not respectful. So we would take like extra garbage bags or whatever. And if you saw some garbage, you'd pick it up and you'd bring it out with the stuff that you took in.
mm,
And I have to say, my kids to this day, they all, and my grandkids, they all go camping and they do the same thing. So I
that's
think
awesome.
I think it has to be instilled at a young age that, this is here for us to enjoy, but you also have to respect it. Now, not everybody is going to be like that. I mean, and you just gotta teach them. I mean, even down here, it just popped into my head as we're talking. There's actually like corporations and community. What they do is they do beach cleanup day, and there's several of them during the year, and it's maybe this particular corporation, and it's their community service, so their employees get community service time for going out and basically doing beach cleanup. And they do that. We have our barrier islands out here by at coastal Mississippi, and a lot of boaters go out there. And again, unfortunately, not everybody's respectful, and so they do island cleanup days, and they'll take a group of people, they'll go over, and basically they spend an entire day picking up the trash on the island. So there are a lot of corporations and small businesses that get together, and they do beach cleanup, and they do all that type of thing. So I think
Yeah, that's awesome.
it's really good. And they even get the kids involved. Excuse me, the
See,
kids involved. So, and
yeah,
that's, I think, where it starts. The kids have to be taught to understand and respect nature.
I think the only way. I don't even think we can teach it to them. It's them understanding it by being in it. I think
Well, that
nature
too.
does that
Yeah.
lesson. Honestly, I think it is nature that they get, wow, look at this caterpillar.
Hmm.
Where did we get to this point of like, ew, it's a caterpillar? Whereas
Yeah.
as kids, we were like, dude, that's so cool.
Oh,
I don't
woolly bears. I used to be endlessly fascinated with woolly bears. I don't know if that's their scientific name. I have no idea, but we
no,
always
no,
called them woolly bears.
a lot of times they are the oh, I have
Yes,
a
they
different
predict
name
the
for
weather.
they are no, no, they're I think they're a sphinx moth
Oh,
that they turn
really?
into. I don't
I
know.
have no idea. I just know that the orange and black and there I and I could get this mixed up, but depending upon the size of the black on the woolly bear will determine whether it's going to be a short winter or a
Oh,
harsh
it's a
winter. Or,
tiger moth. It's a tiger moth. That's
okay.
what it is. I had to go look it up. I couldn't stand it. I have oh, and I love them. I photographed them.
Oh
The
yeah, the
tiger
woolly
moths are
bears.
cool.
Yep.
Yeah. They're Pyroharctica. I oh no, I can't pronounce it. Isabella. It's an Isabella tiger moth.
And
Oh
seriously,
wow.
stop and think about that process. You have a woolly bear, a caterpillar, and then several months later, it's a moth or it's a butterfly. I mean, that to me is just like, and I'm
Like the
not, I
monarchs, right?
yeah,
Like
yeah,
putting
I,
milkweed out for the caterpillars, and here
uh-huh,
comes the monarchs.
right,
And
and
what they need is trees. They need
yeah.
their trees.
So
Oh,
it's what is it? The circle of life.
that's it. And when kids get it, they get so excited and they'll look at the weird stuff and get awed by it. But it's
Hmm.
us adults who go, ew. I don't know. I was raised like, ooh. And Nancy used to watch is it plankton, Nancy? The things where they would multiply these little things in the river.
Hmm.
Oh, I know what she was talking. She's always talking about them. Now I can't remember the name. They're like little black flat things in the rivers and like leeches almost. And then they could lose their tails like lizards and then keep going.
Oh, oh, I know.
You know what
Pollywog,
oh,
pollywogs.
what?
Are
Pollywogs.
pollywogs? I don't know if that's it. They're yeah, they transform. Yes,
Yeah.
I know.
Polly
I think
now I'm looking them up. Now I'm looking them up. See, but this is the beauty of it. Yeah. Oh, yep, that's a tadpole.
or
A
tadpole
po-
pollywog. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, those are cool. I mean, to me, like I think when kids have that lust for life and find something new and go, cool. And then at the same time, I was the kid who ate the flying ants and fried them up. They do taste like peanut butter. It's true. But then you're like, why did I do that? I felt bad once I realized, like, when I learned how much work it was for them to be alive, I was like,
Hmm.
dude, I sucked. I ate one. So that life, it's so important for kids to understand that way of life. Our friend Cheryl Ogle comes on the show. She's a travel advisor and she talks about people going on cruises, multi-generational cruises to
Hmm.
Alaska, and then they went off in like Glacier and Glacier Bay and everything, and kids saw like a whale that was beached on the and dead,
Oh.
and here comes the cleanup crew of vultures and all of that pecking at
Hmm.
it. So the kids had to learn this. This is the cycle of life, and I'm like,
Right.
it's so important for them to learn that and under I mean, what a good way of learning about death. I hate to we're on the nature show talking about death. Here we go. But
Well,
it's
actually,
true.
I don't. I mean, and again, I my kids. One of my all-time all favorite kids movies is The Lion King. And that's all about the circle of life and how everything goes together and you have to I and that literally I think is probably my favorite Disney movie of all time is The Lion King. And
I love
that's
it.
what it's about. I love The Lion King. I could sit and watch it for hours.
Hey, I lived in Africa, man. That was my childhood and it's true. You learned all that. You learned it out in the bush if you went out there. But there was a lot of people also in South Africa didn't or Kenya that didn't go out in the bush, but sometimes the bush would come into your house. So,
Yeah. Yeah,
that
you have no
happened
choice.
too.
You better know.
Hey, listen, in Mississippi and Louisiana and Florida, y'all know that, right? Alabama
Yeah.
too.
Yeah.
And Georgia, yeah, it's all coming in.
Hmm.
That's going to happen. But one thing I wanted to touch on is some of the experiences with birding. You've talked about the Audubon Center before, and I thought I wanted to touch on that. You talked about the terns. I think that's such a great thing. The Everglades, that's kind of where we started our tour. I was at the Everglades. We saw, alligators and everything, but
Mm-hmm.
they were also trying to teach boaters because literally people could get a boat there and just get the keys and go, which is
Mm-hmm.
not cool for wildlife, right? They don't understand about
Right.
manatees and shark, all these things in the water that you could hit. And they were doing this huge initiative to teach boating. And we went on a boat where we were taught how to pole and troll, which of course Nancy and I thought was funny. But they were doing things where in this area you need to go down to like 10 miles an hour or totally don't come here because this is
Mm-hmm.
nesting birds at the time. I think it was a certain ibis or I think the storks. There were nesting birds that needed to be able to nest. And they were really working on that. It was also about the sawgrass that was in the
Mm-hmm.
water, which is the life form for everything. Manatees, everybody's eating on that sawgrass. That's part of that wild landscape. So that was a really cool thing. And it was about birds. But going to your trash thing, we saw a kid dump a can of soda at the Ahinga Trail in the Everglades,
Mm.
and the parents did nothing.
Yeah,
And
that's well,
and
and therein
I
lies
had
the
to
issue.
literally like grab Nancy and walk her to the car
Uh-huh.
because she was going to go off, you know,
I
rightly so.
I
What
hear you.
she did make somebody pick up their trash in Sequoia National Park.
Good. Good
It was
for
a
her.
kid did something, and she said, "Well, that's not in the Junior Ranger book." Like she did something, and they turned around and cleaned up their trash. She's done that.
Good.
Well, there's so many ways, and it's very hard. You can't tell people how to teach their
Raise
kids,
their
right?
kids and how to raise their
You
kids.
can't
You're
do that.
right.
But you can do some like things. I don't know. We just have to do something. We have to be creative. Nancy was creative with the one in Sequoia Park. They were doing road construction and we're all like stuck there. So I was like, whatever you do, understand we're living with it for the next hour, like
Mm-hmm.
literally. And so she was very good. She was very good. I thought, hello, that was well done. And she's like, "Oh, I'm reading the Junior Ranger book." And in the Junior Ranger book, she's reading it out loud out of the window. We do not litter as Junior Rangers. And all of a sudden, they went and picked up their trash and put it in the
There
car.
you go.
So I thought that
Good
was
for
pretty
her.
cool. But there's people who clean up the adopt a highway signs we all see. I
Mm-hmm.
have friends that do that, that clean up the highways, go out there on their own time as volunteers and clean up highways. I think that's a huge thing that we can all
Yep.
do. But anyway, going back to the Audubon thing, I digressed. I
Yeah.
got
That's
excited.
okay.
But the Audubon thing, because about the birds and understanding them, talk a little bit about the Audubon Center because it seems like that area is a place where you can get out in nature, but also learn and have an interpretive experience.
It is. It's basically it's still in Coastal Mississippi. It's called the Pascagoula River Audubon Center, and the Pascagoula River is actually kind of cool in itself. It's the longest free flowing river in the lower 48. And that's just a little tidbit about the river, but it basically has a very unique ecosystem. So the Audubon Center sits right alongside the Pascagoula River, and it's a really great day trip. I mean, you can go there. When I go there, we rent kayaks, and you can go out in the bayous, and you could see a gator. I mean, obviously they're not going to come right up. You could see them in the marshes, and the snowy egrets and ospreys and eagles and cormorants, and
Mm.
it's really relaxing just to kayak through. And then they also have on the ground, so they have a little nature bit, a little I don't know what you building, and they do like different programs there for kids and for adults, and they bring in different at one point in time, one of the times I went, they had a art, like they had local artists from different schools, and they had all drew their photos were all drawn by high school students and middle school. I don't know
Oh,
if there was any elementary, and they displayed them, and it was all about some part of nature. And they have indoor displays, and they show the native animals, like the turtles and the fox and that type of thing. And it's just a really cool place, and you can go through it in a few hours. If you go kayaking for an hour and a half, 2 hours. and then you take a walk through the indoors and you see all the exhibits. And it's a really nice, it's one of those things where you go like, hey, what do you want to do today? Let's go over there. And you can always find something new. Like one time you might see an alligator, one time you might not. You might see an
Oh,
eagle, one time you might see an osprey. It was, some days it just depends upon, and how many people are there. And then they have a really cool thing once a year in September called the Hummingbird Festival. So they get the hummingbirds when they migrate through the area, and they actually tag them. And it's the coolest thing. And they show you how they catch them, and they're so little tiny. I actually got to feel one of them's little heartbeat, because I mean, I say tag, I'm not exactly how they do it, but basically they
the
tag them so they
banding.
can,
Yeah.
yeah, the banding, that's it. And that way they can monitor if the same ones come back. I mean, everybody says if you feed them, like we have I have hummingbird feeders here at my house. I want to say three of them. And in the spring and the fall when they're migrating through, and they're the coolest birds to watch. They're just, and they're
They're
these little
territorial
tiny
as
things.
heck, man.
They
They
sure
really are.
are. And it's hysterical. I mean, I have videos on my phone where you'll get you'll get the two or three males, and they zip and they zoom, and it's really fun to watch them. And then the Hummingbird Festival at the Audubon Center, like I said, they do a whole festival around this, and they bring in different exhibits, like they bring in birds of prey. So there's local rescues and whatever, and they set up, and it's just a really fun little family oriented day that you can go out and just wander around. You can take little hikes. They have native plants. You can see, it's really a nice day on the festival day. And even just for a nice little day trip, oh, you got a Saturday free, hey, let's go to the Audubon Center and just go kayaking for a little bit and go in the bayous. And it's really a cool place.
I want to go kayaking badly. And just also just I think being on the beach, just hanging out on the beach is a way to connect, you know.
It's great
Just
because you can just sit there and just watch. I mean, sunrises and sunsets here in coastal Mississippi are beyond measure. But even if there's a storm, like you can sit on the beach and it can be sunny, and you look out over the water and you can see the storm coming. And
uh-huh.
depending upon how brave you are, can stay right there until it comes ashore. But it is pretty cool to watch. To watch a storm coming in off the Gulf right up into the Sound, and then obviously, but you can see it way far off, and depending on how fast it's moving, and like I said, how brave you are, if you want to hang out on the beach till it's right on top of you or not. But the beach is a cool place to
Yeah.
just walk and just be.
I love it. I love it. You've made me want to come back to Mississippi, that's for sure. So, everybody, I've got Lisa's website linked up in the show notes, and go check it out, writerlisa.com. Again, her book is 100 Things to Do in Coastal Mississippi Before You Die, not dive. I was like, I want to go diving. We were talking about the ocean. I'm like, let's go. Um, you can get on Amazon through Really Press and all of that. So go check it out. And especially if you live in coastal Mississippi or are thinking of going there, definitely get the book. So you have all these hidden treasures at your fingertips, right?
Yes,
More,
absolutely.
yeah, yeah. Thank you so much, Lisa. It's been a real
Not a
pleasure having you back
problem.
on the show.
It's always fun to talk with you. Oh, we always have a great time, and we get into some good conversations.
No kidding. We did it today for sure.
All right. Well, thank
So, everybody, we're doing our Nature Connection show talking about destinations where you can make that connection with nature and really experience the beauty that she has, whether it's scenery or wildlife. And last month, we were talking with Kathleen Walls and Diane Dobry, both of them travel writers, about the state of Florida. We were celebrating Florida Day, and that podcast is up there. You can just go to youtube.com at Big Blend Radio, or just go to nationalparktraveling.com and you'll find it there. And somehow we got them both together again. They're like the Florida duo that come here on Big Blend Radio. Dr. Diane Dobry, you can go to her website, discoverydaze.com. That's DAZE, discoverydaze.com. And it's also Discovery Dazed with a D on the end on Facebook. And for Kathleen, she's an author as well as a travel writer. You can go to AmericanRoads.net for her stories and then for her books. And she's written so many about Florida and the Wild Coast and nature. Go to KatyWalls.com. That's Katy. So welcome back, Diane. How are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Doing good, doing good. How are you doing, Katy?
I'm doing well also.
Hey, I think we're going to have to start a Florida show with the two of you. I don't know what's going on here, but it just happens this way, isn't it? That we're going to cover Florida together again, but this time we're going to be really focusing on a nature connection. And Katy, you've been on our show before talking about um, different wildlife areas. And you know, Nancy, you and I have a thing about kayaking and being out in nature, and kayaking with alligators sounds like a fun thing for us, but today, I know you're going to be talking about one of our most favorite places in Florida, which is Merritt Island, a national wildlife refuge. And you've got everyone, the links I keep telling you about are all linked in the show notes as always. But you've also got a tour guide you wrote about it. And everyone, you can go to tours4mobile.com and look for the Merritt Island National Wildlife Refuge book that Katy is a co-author of, and that is up in the show notes as well. But this is right outside Titusville, right, and connected to Cape Canaveral for people
It
if they're going
is.
to that national seashore.
One of the amazing things about it is as you're riding into it from Titusville, there's one road where you can look down. It's just a dirt road, perfectly natural, and you can look down and see a launch pad on the Space Center.
Oh,
It's
right
right
there.
adjoining the most technical place on Earth and the most wild place, and one of the most wild places in Florida.
Wow, 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 wow. The other thing about that wildlife refuge, being so close to Cape Canaveral, if you want a true nature connection and Cape Canaveral National Seashore, you can go topless if you want as well.
You
They
can
have,
go completely undressed out on,
eh,
on Cape Canaveral Beach.
yeah, there's
Play
two
the
nudie, yeah, clothing optional. I was like the nudie beaches. I couldn't believe it. I was like, no way. You can lie naked or naked if you're depending on where you're from. You can lie naked and watch space shuttles go off. It's a whole different world out there. But what I find very fascinating, and I think what makes Merritt Island such and Cape Canaveral really together is that you've got the lagoon marsh wetlands area connected to the coast. So you have that in between zone where alligators love to hang out. You
Mhm.
got manatees depending on the time of year, and the bird life is insanely amazing. There's that a driving tour people can do, and there's the end of it is like this row of osprey. Um, I, I need to go back. Sorry, you're supposed to talk about this area, but you hit on one of my favorite spots, Katy.
It's a beautiful natural place. It's one of the most beautiful places I think in Florida, and certainly has some of the most nature.
Mm.
Every kind of bird you find your sandhill cranes out there, your whooping cranes, uh, egrets, um, and then other wildlife that, of course, like you said, the alligators. At the time, I would say once it was mating season, and the manatees were swimming around, and it was really hard. I got a few pictures of the manatees, but they were a lot more interested in one another than the people. And there's
Wow.
bobcats out. Never been lucky enough to see a bobcat, but I've seen bobcat tracks. The
Mm,
rangers will tell you that's a really nice ranger station, and they'll tell you that the best time to see the bobcats is early, early in the morning.
mm.
And I'm a real early morning person usually, so didn't see. But the scrub
I've
jay,
been there really early in the morning, and the
did you see
sunrise
one?
is no, not a bobcat. But we saw tricolored herons, and
Oh
just
yeah.
and I think what's great is a lot of national wildlife refuges have these wildlife drives you can do. So if you have someone who can't hike and you want to do that kind of drive, you can. But a lot of times you can park and they'll take you to trailheads that you can do. I mean, they have those ponds. Is it Black Point? Is it the Black Road for the wildlife drive? It's Black something.
There's a trail, scrub jay trail where you get out and you walk, but there's also the loop trail where you ride around, and there's little pull offs where if you see, usually you'll see a lot of birds, and you can pull off to the side of the road and stop and get out and take pictures and watch them for a while. The Scrub Jay Trail, you pull up there, and it's a hiking trail. But as you hike down it, the neatest thing about the time we did it a couple of times, but one time in particular, Scrub Jays have a really kind of odd personality family trait. The mom and pop of Scrub Jays will have a baby, it hatches, but instead of going on its own way and doing its own thing right away, it hangs around. And then when mom and pop have another set of babies hatching, the juvenile Scrub Jay is still there sort of playing guard. And the day we were in there, we got some pictures. The juvenile was just flying all around, and we got a really fantastic picture of the little baby. And he's the tiniest little thing. I mean, not even a handspan. And he's standing there with his wings spread out like he thinks he's an eagle or something going to attack you. And the juvenile and the mother and father bird were there. So it's really one of the most fascinating experiences with birding.
We have right now where we are in Lubbock, Texas, we have blue jays hanging out too. And boy, are they squawky. I love them and woodpeckers together in a forest. And I think that's again what makes Merritt Island so amazing is the biodiversity of the longleaf pine as well, right? So you have palm trees, the pine, you've got the coast. So it really is that diversity that brings in all this wildlife and herons and egrets. The tricolored herons, to me, I flipped out. And
they're beautiful.
Yeah, and don't you get bald eagles too out there?
Yes, they have eagles. I have not seen one. I've seen ospreys. I had the neatest experience watching an osprey actually dive down, catch fish, and come up carrying the fish in his mouth, going back to his nest.
Wow. It's amazing to see these experiences. And I think for kids, for them to, I mean, because you're not going to take that drive or go on a walk and not see anything. You're going to see something.
You're going to see some, and deer, and there's probably bear in there too. I've not seen any.
We saw a manatee the last time we were there, but it wasn't the season.
There were a lot of manatees. It was really hard to get a picture though, because as I said, it was mating season, and they were paying a lot more attention to one another than they were to coming up and breathing.
When is mating season for the manatee? Because isn't it November through February that they gather?
I want to say kind of mid-season is, early March now, but I'm not positive of that. I don't. I've been there so many times. I don't really remember which time that was.
Well, I want to go to Diane now because Diane is taking us to some springs, Rainbow Springs, Homosassa Springs, and also Juniper Springs. So that's one thing about Florida, especially, going through the Panhandle all the way kind of the northern and into central Florida. These springs are like Wakula Springs is one of my favorites too. It's just these turquoise water, clear, and depending on the manatee season, sometimes you can see them, but it's again this biodiversity that happens. And I think last time you were on the show, Diane, you were talking about the luminescence springs. I don't know if I'm even using the right word.
Yeah, I think that was Indian something. I have a person I worked with, and she runs that kind of tour group. I think it's Indian Springs. I don't have it in front of me. But when I lived in Citrus County in 2016, 2017, and I worked as a stringer for the local paper. So during the summer when there's no education stories to write, they'd send me around like, oh, go to Juniper Springs, go to Rainbow Springs, go here, go to Kanapaha in Gainesville. So I didn't even realize I wrote about 10 stories about the wildlife areas there. So, and the birding and everything.
And with the scrub jays, that's something you're saying that these springs also have them all around as well, right?
Yeah, and in fact, Homosassa Wildlife State Park has a walking trail. There's like birds. It's a birding trail, and there's apparently the Great Florida Birding and Wildlife Trail goes through Homosassa, Crystal River, and Inverness, which are all in Citrus County. So if you're a birder, that's like one of the best places. And the scrub jays are, apparently they're endangered and they are only seen in Florida. They're only, I guess, breeding in Florida. But yeah, Juniper Springs And Rainbow Springs. Juniper Springs is in the Ocala State Forest. Rainbow Springs is in Dunellen, which is north of Crystal River. Crystal River is where this past when the manatees were all coming into the coast to stay warm. Crystal River was on the Weather Channel and everything, and Three Sisters area was where the manatees gather. But in the Homosassa Wildlife Refuge, they take care of animals that are injured, and especially manatees that have been injured by propellers, because a lot of times the boats are going in and out of the area where they come in from the Gulf. And they have this place where you can walk into like a little pavilion and then down, and you can see the manatees swimming around through a glass. And they feed them cabbage. They love their cabbage. So, and I think they have a thing, I believe, that you can feed them the cabbage. They'll give you cabbage to do that. And they have a lot of volunteers who know all about the animals and can tell you about them. There's also
That's
a hippo
interesting
there.
about the cabbage, because it's kind of like kelp and things like that. Those kind of coarse plants underwater, right? But I'm thinking that's going to create a lot of bubbles in the water. I'm just saying.
Oh.
Sorry, I had to go there. I had
This is
to.
spring water.
As soon as I was just like, okay, there's a manatee. I see a bubbles over there.
Yeah, they had actually certain kind of plant. I can't remember what it was called, but they had to replant it because it was getting eaten a lot. But juniper
That's grass, I think.
What?
Oh, sawgrass?
Eelgrass, I believe.
Yes, that's it. It was becoming depleted, and they were growing that in certain areas in the water, the sawgrass. But Juniper Springs and Rainbow Springs, I really liked, because they have pools that are like year round, 72 to 74 degrees of the water temperature.
Wow.
They're open 365 days a year, I think, except maybe Rainbow Springs is not on Christmas, but they have like Rainbow Springs I really liked. They also don't allow any kind of outside, they don't allow pets in there, except on the campground. They have to be leashed. They don't allow plastics. They don't allow even bicycles in, I think it's Rainbow Springs, because it can, or is it Juniper? I think it's Rainbow Springs. If you bring your own kayak or canoe, you have to walk it from 18-foot walk from the parking area to the water, because they don't allow any drop-offs in the area. They keep it really pristine. And they have a tubing thing that you can tube for like 2.5 miles, and the water's clear, clear as glass.
Wow, it's amazing, isn't it? When you think about that being so pristine, that crystal clear. I know you have Crystal Springs too, right? We can't not bring up Crystal Springs when you talk about it, but it being so clear, it's like you think it's almost like being at, like Fiji or somewhere. You know what I mean?
It's so clean.
Oh man. And so the manatees come out for that, which is amazing. We were in Sylvan and Pitts or something, Sylvan Springs once. We just found it on the side of the road, and it was mind blowing to me. You could get the springs part and then the river, which was like almost like a black river, and it was so dark. So you had these just complete opposites of waterways right next to each other. And Katie, you've experienced that, right? That
Right. The tannin makes the water black near Pensacola, because that's the other area. There's a lot of the black water rivers, Swanee River, and that's the tannin in it from the pine trees.
Yeah, I think you even have like a black water or black river refuge or forest out.
Black River State Park up there.
Yeah. And then,
Not
so
the
Diane,
area.
did you see that too? At these springs that, here's the crystal blue, see-through water. And then around the corner, it's like, how did it get to that?
I didn't see it, but in Juniper Springs, they don't take the trees. Like if the trees fall into the water, they leave it there. They don't steer it out. And they do have like I think it's a 7-mile wilderness area that there's a 3 to 5 hour long canoe and kayak run run, and they say if you're dating someone and you go on that run, you're going to know if you can live with them or not, because it's so challenging with all the trees and everything and getting stuck on things.
But that's important though, because they're letting life keep its cycle. You
Right.
know, it's the same thing as everyone taking their leaves and raking their leaves up and not letting, it's part of why we are losing our fireflies, is losing that habitat, because
Really?
we want everything so manicured. And
Mm,
manicuring is not necessarily good for nature, which means that's why you start having pesticides and stuff, because you haven't let nature do its job. If you let things be natural, yeah, you can have your little manicured areas. Not saying that you can't, right? So people want to have a patch of lawn for kids to play on and things like that. But leave some spaces for, if you share and coexist, the birds will come and get the bugs. We were
yeah.
laughing about possums earlier because we love possums, and the possums eat the ticks. And as we keep taking out these animals, then we end up, Lyme's disease. We've done so many interviews. Doug Tellamy is a professor, and he's written a book, The Best Hope for Nature, and he's done it for kids, and he's got a whole movement calling it's about kids creating a national park in their backyard. So,
Mm,
so that kids get to witness things like raccoons and the birds. And, it's like, oh, we're letting nature do its thing. Fireflies is another thing, is, you take all those leaves away, we don't have fireflies. And people are like, well, we used to have fireflies. I don't know why. Well, you're doing Roundup, you're doing,
yeah.
you're not leaving water, you're taking the dead trees where bugs hide in, and then the birds get them, so we're taking away that web of life. So it's so cool to see. But as we kill mountain lion and bobcat and all these, these key species, well, then the predators are gone from the deer. We have more deer. People get mad about deer in their gardens, and deer, and the ticks. That's what causes Lyme disease. So there's this whole cycle of what we have done or undone in nature. And so when you go to these areas, what you're talking about, Diane, makes me so incredibly happy that they let areas be what nature would do. Because those trees, we as human beings may go, what a pain in the butt for boaters and blah blah blah, but you know what, that's how nature has it. And
And there's a reason
something's
for it.
living in there. Exactly.
The
Exactly. I
scrub
mean,
days, at one time in the 1800s, there were 50,000 of them. Now, Audubon Society says there's only about 9,000 left. And the whole problem is, Carl Hyacin, the Florida author, gets it down. The scrub jays can't vote, and the developers can. And they
Mm,
both like the same habitat, that scrub habitat. So
uh,
who's going to win?
yeah, the
oh,
money.
money. Oh,
Uh-huh.
Diane, you and I get 10
Yes,
points.
that's right.
Yeah.
Ding, ding, ding.
Yeah,
Well,
but
even
that's so that,
in Juniper Springs, they have you can camp, but there's bears, and they say, well, we want people to learn to live with the bears, so they have lockers for your food,
mhm.
so that
Yeah.
you're not going to attract them to your area. But
That is done most refuges, national parks, state parks, because if the bears come for food, and then they become the human
for
nuisance, and
people.
they end up killing the bear, which is unfortunate,
And that's their home. That's where they live. If they smell food, they think they can go get it. I mean, we're taking their land away from them and then wanting to shoot them. And there's a law going through which is going to pass Florida Senate any day now, where people can shoot bears in their backyard if they come in their backyard or anything. You know,
Oh, that's
it's
sad. That
it
that's a
is.
I know New Jersey went through, we did some shows on New Jersey hunting of bears. I mean, they were getting short on bears. And bears, again, is a prime species that is so important. I mean, they eat insects too. People forget that. They eat, worms, the grubs. In the fall, I remember just being in Sequoia National Park with Nancy and I, hiking this beautiful meadow, Crescent Meadow. It's my favorite place. Talk about a nature connection spot. And you go into the forest from there, and we heard this, really loud scratching and kaboom, like big kabooms of trees. Well, it was bear and her mama bear and her cubs, three cubs. And we wanted to get photos, but we didn't, because mama
No,
was on the run, and you don't mess with that. But what they were doing were the bears in the fall, before they do their hibernation, which is not a full hibernation. They just want to be cozy over winter, and rest a bit. They scratch out the grubs out of the dead trees, and the dead trees are crucial for wildlife, for bugs, for insects, for
Right.
birds, to feed off of, bears, all of that, it's crucial. So as we take things away to be perfect for our homeowners associations, we may want to think about what we're actually doing as a whole. But the bear thing, it's sad because we have encroached on their territory big time on bears. Asheville, North Carolina, people are coexisting with bears in their neighborhoods. Bears come in their backyards. People learn how to do their trash properly. You can lock your trash so that bears can't get in. There are things you can do instead of kill them.
Yeah.
Really. Sorry about Florida. That sucks.
I did
It's
a
sad.
story about the Citrus County Eagle Scouts, and one of the things you were talking about, all the bugs, they were building like these, I don't even know what they call them. It's almost like a box on
Bat box. Yeah, bat boxes.
and
Yeah.
so they would eat the mosquitoes. The bats.
Gainesville has that, and
Mhm.
they have the bat houses, and every night the bats come swarming out and eat tons of mosquitoes.
Yeah.
See, that's exactly it. Bugs do it. Bugs are eaten by other wildlife, and if we kill them, then the
Mhm.
bugs are here. Then we spray, and then that also weakens our immune system as human beings, and we get sick. Your kids get sick. Your pets get sick. So, the nature connection, that's the important thing, I think, is when you go out in wildlife to see the cycle of life occur. When you see a heron hunt for a fish or a snake,
Mhm.
man, that always gets me, is herons and snakes, how that happens, man. Herons are just, don't mess with a heron. And they will squawk at you if you get in their hunting zone. My gosh, will they squawk and make a noise? But when you see, like just that example, and you think, oh, wow, I want that water to be clean so that the heron is eating a clean fish and that the fish had a clean life while it was there. That's the point of what we do with the Nature Connection show is, hey, if we can keep those places pristine, we can enjoy them. And these critters can do what they do naturally in their cycle, not ours,
Yeah, keep it balanced.
Because we need them too. We all need each other. So it's that coexistence part. So Rainbow Springs, Homosassa Springs, Juniper Springs, are they all like close? Like, so if someone went on a little road trip to Florida, that
Yeah,
they
well,
could.
Homosassa is south, and then you go north to Rainbow Springs is Denellen, and then a little bit northeast of that is Ocala, and so I would say Ocala's not much more than a half an hour from Crystal Rivers or Citrus County.
Oh,
So it's
very cool.
a nice little day trip or weekend trip. There's a lot of hiking trails and kayaking trails in Citrus County.
I can't leave this Florida conversation without giving St. Mark's National Wildlife Refuge a shout out. It's one of my other favorites. Come on, Katie, I know you've been there too. It's awesome, isn't it?
Yes, it is. The cutest little alligator I've ever seen, just sitting there in the bank, just looking at me.
They're cute, and you do talk to them. And have you heard the alligators when they all start talking and they kind of bark and giggle at the same time?
During mating season, they'll do that a lot. I was kayaking with a friend, Deb Thompson. We were doing an RV trip across Florida, and we were kayaking not Rainbow Springs, Alexander Springs, right near Juniper Springs. And she's from out west, and she's not used to alligators. And she kept hearing them bark, and she kept asking, "You think they're going to bother us?" Because we were in inflatable kayaks. I thought, you're not their type, they're not worried. But you could definitely hear them, almost like little dogs barking in the background.
Speaking
and
of little
Alexander
dogs,
Springs is like Juniper. It's perfectly clear. You can see down to the bottom.
Oh, that's neat. So you see the alligators in the clear water? Do they get it? Because you see, most of the pictures I see is
You can see them
in the clear
every
water.
now and then. Yeah. Mostly we didn't see any. They would be closer to the bank. They get up on the log.
Yeah,
and
they sun themselves on the bank.
This was in Georgia, Stephen Foster Park, and one went right under my kayak.
That's
Luckily,
cool.
he didn't come up and turn me over.
Yeah, that would be a little messy. And I'm glad you're here.
Yes.
Glad you're here. Do you see them out in the Orlando area, Diane? The alligators?
Alligators. Well, I was house sitting. I told you I was just house sitting and cat sitting. It was south of Orlando in Point Siena near Kissimmee, and my
Mm.
friend, she says she walks all around there, and there's all kinds of boars and all these big birds, sand cranes, I guess they are. But I was riding my bike and I saw an alligator, but it was small. It was like the size of a dog, a small dog. And I said, well, there's got to be a mama around, so I'm not going to stop to take a picture. So, but I used to live on a lake in the Orlando area. My apartment overlooked the lake, and you would see people running around with cameras snapping pictures because there were about 7 alligators in the lake that hung around this dock where they would launch from.
Oh, but the alligators are cool, man. They really, I mean, I remember that's kind of how our tour started. Our Love Your Parks tour was in Everglades National Park, and you could just walk right next to them. They're sunning, they don't care. But if you mess with
Oh,
them,
yeah.
they're going to care, you know. Um, but I
They're
think
all over the Everglades. Big
the
cypress,
Ever
especially.
I think the Everglades is one of the most crucial habitats we have in this country, and
Yeah.
it's going through so much hell. Biscayne, Big Cypress, like you're saying, there's oil drilling and there's a lot of threat.
The
But
big sugar refineries too are dumping in there and not worrying about how they're polluting it.
Mm.
but it's the water source for a lot of Florida
But that's the
Everglades.
thing is that I never could understand when I moved here that they have everything. You go to these fast food places and they have all this styrofoam cups and styrofoam packaging. And I'm like, we're in Florida, the aquifer, you can't be polluting it. And yet they don't recycle
They don't
this
care.
stuff.
They just don't care. It's just to make the money quick as we can now.
It's a
And
shame.
that's all they're worried about. And it's not just in Florida, Louisiana. Look what they've done to their waterways with all the oil there. And that's
Yeah.
what the hurricanes come in even more.
Yeah. This is the importance. If you go out and you really see how pristine, when you find places that are truly protected, it's gorgeous. I mean,
Yeah.
you feel healthy. There's nothing that will make you feel as healthy as you can possibly be than nature. Nature, because
Oh,
that's our true state as a human being, is to be
Mhm.
part of the natural ecosystem. And when we're outside in fresh air, I know you all have to have air conditioning in Florida, right? But when you're out in fresh air and you're part of it and your body starts to connect with it, you're part of the place. There's a term, biophilia, and I'm probably not pronouncing it correctly, but it is when you are part of the landscape, you become one with it. And it's the most healthiest feeling ever that you could ever experience. And the more we do it, the healthier we are. They're trying to document about how nature is medicine for human beings.
Mm-hmm.
And we've kind of pulled ourselves away from it. So the most important thing we can do is go for a picnic outdoors, if that's the easiest thing. Go for a walk outside. Go to a park. If you do the drive around in the National Wildlife Refuge, try and get out where you can, even just to feel that wind, on your face, feel it, and
And
just
there's
to
a higher
listen.
oxygen content when you get out there with all those trees too.
Mhm.
You breathe
You,
better.
I get absolutely euphorically giddy and weird. I can't help it. To be in a place like Nancy and I do a lot as we travel the country, people look at us like, well, you could go to stay at this hotel, this resort, and we do a lot of that. We do. A lot of bed and breakfast, a lot of hotels, a lot of motels where I can just park our car and not have to unpack the whole thing. But we're always trying to get to, especially wildlife refuges and national parks, sunrise, because then you have the dawn's chorus. You see the sunrise, you watch and hear. If get out of the car and listen, you will hear everybody wake up and communicate, and the birds will talk to each other. You can hear the wildlife. You can see the deer start to go out and get their first drink of the day. It is something that it is you don't need coffee. I still need coffee, but
Yeah.
you really don't. You really don't, because there's such an energy from all these species, And we like to get there when it's still dark and that crossover happens because you can even hear the bug changeover. It's very odd. And you do get bitten. So yes, you can put things on that you don't get bitten as much. You can wear the right clothes. You can do things, but to witness this and be part of it makes you really realize that you are part of the universe. It is the biggest connection that we have. So,
when you were talking about the trees, I was remembering the movie Fungi with how the mushrooms connect to the trees and the ants.
Fantastic Fungus. Yeah. I love that documentary.
That was very interesting and informative about nature and how it all works together.
It does, and we're part of it, and that's the point of all of this. This is awesome. Ladies, thank you so much and for shining the good light and then also keeping us aware of some of the issues, because regardless of styrofoam, regardless of any of the things that are negative, we still have a voice and we still can choose where we put our dollars. We can vote, we can do things. We can use our social media posts to do good. We can use our voice, use our wallets. So we can make a change.
Oh,
yes.
I'm making a note of this on this bear law. The ones who are voting to let people shoot bears, I'm making a note of the people who are voting for it and against it, and my vote's going to count on that one.
See, that's a good point about. It's where you put your political vote. Is it vote for nature, which is ultimately voting for you?
Right. We're all part of nature. We just forget that sometime and go chasing that almighty dollar.
Yeah.
Well, I think if Florida could look at what Asheville, North Carolina is doing, they managed the bears are collared so that they know what bear's doing what and where, but they're not being killed unless there's really a problem. Everyone's just kind of coexisting, and it's like, cool, there's a bear, So
I love to see a bear. I've seen very few in the wild, but I do love when I see one.
They're awesome. We just saw one recently on our way into Tucson. We went to Chiricahua National Monument, and we were just leaving the park, and a bear just stumbled down a cliff and ran in front of the car, ran in front of us, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's a bear, and it's a little bear. Well, it was big in Arizona terms, but little for, other bears, but cute, and when you see those paw print, those pads, that's like, wow. Amazing, amazing. Well, ladies, thank you so much, everyone. Again, I've got the show notes. You can look at the links there to connect with Katie and Diane. Again, it's discoverydays.com for Diane's blog, and she has all kinds of great travel destinations there. For Katie's books, go to katiewalls.com. That's Katy, katiewalls.com. And for her stories, go to americanroads.net. And of course, keep up with us at bigblendradio.com and our Nature Connection show that airs every fourth Friday. And we will link to articles and books and everything from the show notes, so check it out there. Thank you, ladies.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Big Blend Radio's Nature Connection show. Follow us at bigblendradio.com and keep up with Margot at margotcarrera.etsy.com.